are the leaders for tomorrow, but we don't agree on that. We agree that children and youth are the leaders for today, and
Yeah.
we are bridging the gap today. So we have to be very realistic about what are the outcomes, what are the frameworks that we will be working upon. And this is where this knowledge comes in, and this is where our event, where we welcome pioneers like you, we welcome experts like you, to make it understandable how we can explain to a 15 years old a child, so that it will be easier for anyone. So it is ABC, anyone can contribute, anyone can understand as well. So this is where we are right now.
Yep.
And for also everyone watching, a quick one: type in the comments, when you hear energy transition or energy transition, what is the first word that comes to your mind? Is it job? Is it renewables? Is it politics? Is it cost? Is it justice? Let me see what everyone comes at. I can see nearly 600 people are watching it. So let us see how exactly your mind works. And now, Harjit, countries often justify continued fossil fuel production by saying, like, we need energy security. Is still true, of course, or renewable energy becomes energy security as well. But followed by, could today's geopolitical tension actually accelerates clean energy, or it's just a political, dilemma that we still have the grids, we need money, but also we can go green, but we are not. So, or it's a paradigm shift. They want that, okay, if everything, every informations, every skill, every technology we have, then only we'll go.
Well, I would go slightly deeper into the question itself,
Mm-hmm.
or the narrative. Who is saying that? If developed countries are saying it, then I would not take it at all. It's not worth the paper where they are writing this narrative at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at Canada, the US,
Mm-hmm.
Norway, who are major producers, if you look at the proportion of revenue that they are getting from fossil fuels, it's still
Correct.
tiny. It's in a single digit.
Mm.
Whereas when we talk about Nigeria and Colombia's and Indonesia's, it's massive dependence.
True.
So, which means that global south countries who are dependent on fossil fuels for their revenues, jobs, or energy, they need much more time and support in making that transition. And that's exactly the reason we talk about equity and justice. And because the global south did not historically create this crisis, they cannot bear the heaviest burden, be it in terms of economic or human cost. And that's why we say we need structural support to make this transition now towards green industrialization, which is required if you want to give jobs to billions of people. So we need to look at what will help us implement that
Mm-hmm.
equity based plan. And that's why we need a treaty, because you need global
Mm-hmm.
cooperation. You need to support those countries who are not responsible. We talk about capacity based targets, which means
Mm-hmm.
wealthy countries with high financial capacity and low economic dependence, as I said, uh, they need to phase out much faster,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they need to provide money to those countries who are dependent not because of choice. We see that countries who have high debt and are into fossil fuel extraction, even if they want, they are not able to move away because they have to do debt servicing. And that's why we need public finance. There are countries, consumer countries, who would like to invest into renewable energy, but even if the per unit cost of renewable has gone down dramatically, but the upfront cost has not, you need grid upgradation, you need
Mm-hmm.
investments in putting up the solar plants, you need
Correct.
public finance for that, right? Or even the cost of finance remains very high in developing countries.
True.
So if developing countries are saying it, we need to understand why they are saying it and how we can support them.
This, I think, it's a really hard conversation as well. Probably the hardest one till now. That, of course, developing countries always say that to the developed countries, that you developed using fossil fuel. Now you are asking us not to. This is always the narrative that we hear during the negotiations. Uh, how do we respond that fairly? Because this is a really long-standing conversation. I always hear from the developed countries to to the developing countries to the developed country. For your example, that I know that you have been into several stages, global platform, and you talk with just not one mindset, but also different mindset from different countries. Economic aspect, it's not just the economic aspect, as it's about the livelihood. Economic aspect, it's not about the just economic aspect, it's social economic aspect that we say about. And also we depends on the GDP right now. We also depends on the emission based GDP, which should not be, it should have been decoupled before. But what's your say on that fairness?
Well, you have partly answered the question, so let me add to that. Because at a principle level, they are absolutely right. If you look at historical emissions, and that's why we say developed countries are responsible,
Mm-hmm.
even right now, 50% of cumulative emissions into the atmosphere have been caused by that early industrialization that began with the UK and spread
Yes.
around the world. So it's developed countries. 12% of population in the developed countries is responsible for 50% of emissions. So absolutely. And they developed through and by using fossil fuels, and they've reaped the benefits of burning fossil fuels, and we are the ones paying the cost of that. Now, at a principle level, absolutely, that argument is valid. However, now when we look at where we are in terms of technology or alternatives that are available, it doesn't make sense even for developing countries to remain stuck with the fossil economy or continuing to invest. Number one, we know that all the investments that we are making now in the fossil fuel sector are going to become standard assets. A coal-fired power plant life cycle is about 40 to 50 years. Same with a gas terminal.
Gas terminals,
So
yeah.
if you invest, you are actually burning your money.
Mm.
So what you need, and then when we say transition is where you have something and you're transitioning from something to something else. But
Correct.
like Africa, even some parts of Asia and Latin America, where people don't have access to energy, it's better we start with renewable energy than building that infrastructure, which is going to become irrelevant and infeasible in terms of its economic value. So the argument gets a little bit more nuanced. So developing countries, if they are setting up, of course they need to be supported through finance and
Mhm.
technology. We don't need to repeat the same mistakes that developed
Mistakes.
countries did 200 years ago, 50 years ago. I think now that has changed, and we need to talk about, and it's also in our favor. I mean, I am living in India, where majority of our cities are facing a pollution issue. When you go for a fossil fuel extraction project, you also displace people, you cause damage to the ecosystem. So it's nowhere going to help us in the medium to long term, even if immediately you are able to have access, but that's not helpful at all.
Very interesting. So, connecting the dots, we say that 40, 50 years of lifespan for hydro or any other fossil fuel based captive power plants, whatsoever, etc. But also we see that the wind farms, the windmills, and the solar panels, they also do have certain lifespan kind of thing, like maybe 15 years, maybe 20 years, maybe 25 years. They need to change as well. Do you think the supply I think the supply chain plays a crucial role in the entire scenario. If we don't have proper way of recycling, if we don't have a proper plan what to do after 25 years, so that we can also enjoy a constant flow of energy, but also having less capex, less upfront cost. This is also a part which I'm talking about, is the transfer of skills, the transfer of technology, the mostly the transfer of skills, because if the skills are there we can make the technologies either way. But we have found that in most of the developing countries as well, and more and few of the developed countries, the skill transfer are very less in terms of from a technician base to a lower base, where exactly the residential areas where people generally comes and do the work, a handyman kind of thing. And over there, that if the technology changed a lot, but those handymen doesn't have proper skills to to repair or replace those like few height end technologies, which at the end, I'm talking about real life scenarios from Scotland and from UK at least, which from at the end they goes back to again gas boilers rather than, like, the the electric one or maybe the solar powered one, just because of lack of proper skill transfer to those handymans or those technicians. I'm not talking about the engineers, just the on ground technicians. So do you think this problem can also be solved in global south, while because right now this is a problem that has been caused in the global north already, and from there we can learn something in the global south where we can strategically move ahead, just not with the technology but also the skills, but also the jobs, the green jobs that I'm talking about.
Well, you've said a number of things and challenges that need to be sorted, and that's exactly the reason we say that we need to look at the whole issue of transition in a very comprehensive manner, and
Mm-hmm.
not in those silos where we talk about, oh, solar and recycling, which is an important part, then we say, oh,
Mm-hmm.
challenge related to wind in terms of land and problem to the local communities, or the skilling and reskilling that is required. We need to look at it holistically. For now, there is no doubt that we have not solved all the problems related to recycling of the renewable energy technologies and the products. It is often far more expensive than disposal. So we need to make sure that the way we do collection or dismantling or transport and material and the separation that's going to be required is to be done in a very scientific manner and at scale at which the cost goes down, right? And there are certain experiments that are going on how to deal with those equipments,
Correct.
and also we need to look at what kind of material that is being used. If it's a very low quality material or low value material, how we are going to reuse that. It's a complex subject.
Correct.
Having said that, you can't say just because those problems exist related to recycling, and there are certain breakthroughs which I keep hearing about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we are not going to move away from fossil fuels. Fossil
Mm-hmm.
fuels cause a number of problems, nowhere near what renewable energy is doing. You install it first once, for the next 25, 30 years, you are sorted. And of course, we need to come together to talk about how we can relook at the recycling of these materials in a much more sustainable manner. And I will always bring that conversation that if we, even if we have access to those, high value silver and silicon and rare earth material,
Correct.
we can just keep going about it, because even mining those products also cause several issues. So we need to talk about bringing down our consumption, particularly and starting with the global
Very
north.
nice. Mm-hmm.
It's not that that technology is totally free from all kinds of challenges.
Mm-hmm.
I have no hesitation in saying that I can't see 1.4 billion people in India living the same lifestyle as a European. Forget about American, that is far worse. so, so we need to talk about sustainability of our lifestyle as well,
That's true.
and governments are going to be responsible. Don't promote individual cars, invest in public transport. How you are going to make sure that our lifestyle is in harmony with nature, and not just. So transition doesn't mean just changing the energy source. It's
Mm-hmm.
about changing our relationship with nature,
Very
and
nice.
that would require us to rethink how we grow, what we eat, how we travel, how we use different energy, how we do the packing and packaging of so many products, how much do we buy? All those questions need to be answered. So, and that's where young people have a very important role. So, my parents did not live that lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
My generation, and even not everybody in the global south is living that lifestyle that people in Europe or Americas are living. But definitely our coming generations and even the current one, young people can't afford to live that lifestyle. So something has to be done with the way our economies are structured and with the way we live our lives.
No, that's true. In fact, when you talked about your livelihood, your parents, and everything, it's very crucial. Just an interest, because you came from India. You lived in. I think you born and brought up in India, according
I'm
to
living in
me.
India.
Yes, and it's been a while. You've been in this space, in the climate space, and looking ahead with India's economy, the fossil fuel economy, a coal-based economy, how you have changed your course of life into this area where you are asking a proper life changing moment for everyone. It's not just now, it's for the future of everyone as well. How you came to know that, okay, this is really needed, this is a pressing situation, and we have to get small step first, and then we can collectively come together. And yes, one of the barrier is fossil fuel. What was your, I can say, interest on that? How the interest came in, basically?
Well, if I talk about my journey, so I come from a hardcore development sector, my experience,
Mm-hmm.
and I started working with communities who were getting impacted by disasters. Starting with India, I was a kind of a humanitarian worker. I've responded to various kinds of disasters, both climate and non-climate disasters, from earthquakes to tsunamis to fire to floods, drought.
Wow.
And then my work took me beyond India. I worked in Asia, Africa, Americas, Nepal, Bangladesh, Haiti, Guatemala, different countries where I've worked. And for me, the understanding of disasters and how
Mm-hmm.
people getting impacted took me to climate, because 90% of disasters are related to climate or weather.
Climate.
And then I started working on the issues of loss and damage and adaptation. And also then I recognized that unless and until you are looking at the source of the problem, that's fossil fuels, you are not going to be able to deal with the cause of the climate crisis. And that's how I got into this issue, and I got more engaged with the fossil fuel phase out work and my association with treaty. So I have been, so my entry into the climate space was, as I said, through disasters, but then I
Mm-hmm.
cover the whole spectrum, from cause to consequences. So
Consequences.
that's how I look at it.
Very interesting journey, just because I can see that it's not started from the top level, it started from the bottom level, where you understand the situation, you understand each and every livelihood, how they are facing the challenges, and then you
Absolutely.
came.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
so I have spent 2.5 decades, and even now, working with communities and governments
Hmm.
across the global south. I also do farming, as I was saying in my introduction. I work
Yes.
very closely with farmers, and I'm directly seeing these impacts of floods, droughts, and heat waves on their crops,
Hmm.
on their lives. I see people being displaced or forced to
Correct.
migrate. And that's why in our work on the issue of loss and damage, we talk about remedy or reparations for these communities. That's why it's about justice. So yeah, I mean, we are talking about a whole shift in system. That's why we also say in our slogans, system change, not climate change. So the whole
Climate change.
system
Correct.
has to be looked into.
As you say about the system change, it's quite funny that I also had the same mindset when I came into this climate change space, specifically towards the COP, because COP 26 was my first COP at that time, and before that I was working in India with several communities, and yeah, even in GURV scheme and electrification scheme, renewable scheme, rooftop scheme, and this kind of stuff. Also, I worked in Swachh Bharat Abhiyan as well, with the
Okay.
government of India. When I came into this sector, I saw that quite siloed approach. When you have a, for example, you have a discussion has to be done for energy, then you have a specific siloed discussion. You cannot move away from one silo to another silo. It's very specific,
Exactly.
but interconnectionally, it actually affects each other. If I'm talking about adaptation, I can talk about mitigation, but I cannot talk mitigation inside the adaptation field, because then I have to come to the mitigation field, and then of course it starts from scratch. Same goes with finance as well. If I'm talking finance, then I have to go to the finance siloed space, rather than like moving around from vertical level. I have to move around like row wise, right? Which was a challenging situation for me as well. So that means the system has to be changed. What was your
Absolutely.
experience when you came to this kind of processes? Was your experience the same, or you found out different kind of variation?
Oh, absolutely. So negotiations have been extremely siloed. In fact, initially I started working on adaptation. It was a challenge. In fact, people who have been engaged with negotiations can tell you, and I'm definitely one of those. If we had allowed developed countries to play their game, we would not even have seen adaptation
Hmm.
featured in the Paris Agreement itself. Forget about loss and damage, and we had to put up a massive fight to have those
Hmm.
articles, Article 7 and 8, which deal with adaptation and loss and damage. So again, because the interest developed countries had was just to talk about mitigation, because developing countries were beginning to industrialize, so they thought if they don't mitigate, then we are also going to be affected.
Yeah.
So That's why we have always advocated for a system-wide approach or economy-wide change,
Wide approach.
and not looking at, when we say mitigation or adaptation, we also talk about co-benefits. We talk about economies to be changed and not looking at even silos of mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage. Yes, there are some distinct actions that you have to take, but your approach has to be holistic. Communities don't live with these silos, they live one life, right? And everything is connected. So you need to look at it from people's perspective, from communities' perspective, and that's why we always talk about having a holistic approach towards our response to the climate crisis.
No, absolutely right. When you talk about the holistic approach, I think we are also approaching COP31. And what must happen there, and that didn't happen before, according to you, and what conversations are still avoiding by the parties is also a question. So, according to you, what needed to be done in this COP31, as accordingly, just not fossil fuel phase out, but also in other aspects?
Well, I would say finance, 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 top three priorities, because developing countries are ready with their plans. The range estimates from 3 trillion to $5 trillion annually required by developing countries alone. And they don't have money. They have a plan, but no money.
Ways.
And developed countries are responsible to provide money. And they can't have an excuse money is not there. It's going to the wars, it's going to the fossil fuel industry or the financial sector. uh, we have several examples where they could provide money. So money is important, and unless and until finance is provided, and also technology to help countries make the transition, and of course deal with the issues of adaptation. Speaking of loss and damage fund, and that's why we have this campaign, fill the fund, because we still only have what, $800 million pledged, and
True.
barely 600 close to $600 million received into the bank account that we have on loss and damage fund. A lot of money is still to be paid, and the needs are $400 billion annually in developing countries alone. So money is absolutely critical, which to even deliver justice, right? So that's one. Second, I would say just transition mechanism that is being discussed right now, and we had several
True.
conversations at the bond
The
session
terms of references as well for the, yeah.
exactly this year in June. So we need to make sure that that mechanism is fully developed, and of course the transitioning away from fossil fuel roadmap that presidency has taken it upon
1.3
themselves.
trillion. Mm,
That should have real elements and make connection with Santa Marta. So we know that Paris will not be able to deliver it in totality,
true.
but we need to talk about right things, not just national roadmap, but also about international cooperation. And that's why connection with Santa Marta process and treaty are important. There are also elements on adaptation, on global goal on adaptation related indicators. And then, of
Mm,
course, we need an oversight on loss and damage fund and the entire body of work. Because I'm just coming back from Manila. That's where we had the ninth board meeting. And I can tell you, and we have posted on Fill the Fund social media channels, we are not going in the right direction, too slow, and we don't have sufficient money. So we need an oversight by the COP on the work related to addressing loss and damage. So yeah, those are the couple of things that we need to really sort out.
Uh, when we say oversight by the COP, it's also not a mandated process. Sometimes countries deliver some kind of document, or maybe they say that okay, we will do it, but afterwards we see that they sway away from their promises all the time. Most of the time the numbers are just on the papers. As you said, we only received 600 till now for the loss and damage, till way like 200, 300 more to go, which I think it started. It's been 3-4 years calling for that, for the funds as well. So, do you think there should be an oversight, but also there should be an oversight of a third party, which should have some kind of mandate in their power?
Well, COP is the supreme body, and it's like the assembly, and they have all the power. It's just that the way negotiations are done in this space, based on consensus, and one country can veto, those countries are taking this process to host
Advantages.
it.
Hmm.
That's the problem. Not that it
Hmm.
doesn't have sufficient power and teeth. If it wants, I mean, it's a legal. legally binding agreement, but it is not being enforced because certain parties are behaving, either they are pulling out of Paris Agreement. We know that's
Mhm.
exactly what the US
Yep.
did, or
Yes.
they are not meeting their obligation. They need to be called out. As simple as
Mm.
that.
No, I think in Kyoto Protocol we saw the same situation when it failed in 2012, when China and US again voted out themselves as well. And I think Kyoto Protocol was one of the first binding agreement of the world, and then it came
Yeah,
the Paris Agreement.
yeah, it's
Um,
Canada and the US, because they were the ones responsible for implementing Kyoto
Correct.
Protocol.
Correct.
And another thing that we are saying as part of Santa Marta process, no one agreement can deal with this massive challenge. So we
Mm.
have Paris Agreement. We also need a fossil fuel treaty, and we need such agreements that can help us achieve the Paris goal, but not through Paris Agreement by itself. We need certain companion treaties and processes and frameworks, like International Court of Justice Advisory Opinion, which is very
Yes.
helpful in
Mm.
reminding countries of their responsibilities and putting them under spotlight, and putting
Mm.
pressure that they have to work. So we need many such processes to make sure that we are able to achieve the goals set by Paris Agreement.
Correct. Also, like Harjit, as you are someone who has been working closely with the young people worldwide, and I remember that we had a conversation during last SBs as well
That's
on
right.
fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty and also the loss and damage fund. It was quite impressive that we had a proper podcast on that, which is running, and people, like all the youths are listening to it as well, which is quite helpful. Thanks a lot for that. So sometimes I feel that young people are not asking a seat anymore. They're asking for the blueprints. What exactly the blueprints, the frameworks are right now. We don't need the seat, we need the solution. So how do you see the leaders are evolving, especially the youth and the children in this space?
Well, I would repeat the same thing. Please get involved, not only in terms of attending the negotiations or being at the COP. Yes, if you are able to do that, which is also very expensive and not everybody gets a space, please do. But then there's a lot that you can do in your own country where you are, whether you're working at the local level or subnational level, national level. You can do much more, and that's why it is important for you to engage, calling out your own politicians, holding them to account wherever you are, also in developing countries, and unpacking what climate justice is, or I would say climate reparations is, because again, youth have a very important role to define what kind of climate action that you are actually calling for. So youth have to get engaged at all levels, and also in, I would say, in constructing something and creating solutions. Of course, we need policy change, but we also need solutions that can be implemented now. So if you can contribute to those solutions, please do. Please do come forward. So yes, so cover the entire range. You know, it's your future which is at stake much more. So, and we talk about intergenerational rights and justice. So, youth have a very, very important role to play across the board when we talk about climate action and climate justice.
Definitely. As you talk about climate action, I think last week we saw the London Climate Action Week as well, and I heard you were there. I crossed a path with one of your colleague when I was coming back. Unfortunately, I was coming back at that time, so otherwise I could have met you at that during the time we launched the London Clean Energy Roundtable, which is
Okay.
called the LCR in the Parliament, and another roundtable in the same space of London Clean Energy Roundtable as well. Second day in the Commonwealth Secretariat. So we had a discussion, and the main entire event was in one goal that under one roof everyone should be there. Without a single entity, the discussion will not move ahead. So the goal was entirely specific to private sector, public sector, ministries, stakeholders, NGOs, CSOs in one room, and only talking about the policies that have flaws, which can
Mm.
be which can be rectified over the course of time, and what exactly is needed. Because everywhere we can hear that finance is required, grid implementation, everything is required, but how? It's not about what we know what needed, but how we should came up with,
Exactly.
right? So this is what
Yeah.
we did during the time. Well, how was your experience in London Climate Action Week?
Well, I would say there's a lot of interest, and especially because what's happening in the US with the current political situation, um, everybody realizes that New York Climate Week is not going to get as much attention,
True.
unfortunately. So
Mm.
many shifted their focus towards London, and that's how we saw events multiplying compared to the previous such climate weeks.
And the
So
heat as well.
that's a good thing. And the heat as well. In fact, the events on heat wave were cancelled because of heat wave, or they moved online.
True.
So it was a very clear message from the existence, from the climate system, saying you are not doing enough, and you are going to suffer if you don't do enough. So yes, some very good conversation. A shift that I see, that in the global north, because of
Mhm.
these climate impacts like heat wave, the discussion on habitability or adaptation uh, is getting much more attention, because something that we always said from global south, for us it was an issue of survival, habitability, adaptation, dealing with impacts. Now the global north is also beginning to take up those issues far more seriously.
Right. No, in fact, it was quite surprising for me as well. I haven't experienced that much of heat in London and in UK, but yeah, it is. It's not just London. That if you go to Europe, if you in Paris and in other sector of Lisbon, they're having the same experience, and which is like a total shift. Like total shift to an infrastructure which was not been made, keeping in mind that it can happen. The climate change can happen in the future. So this is a real example that we are facing right now. So
Exactly.
moving ahead right now, I think the best thing, the best part of this conversation is a game, right? Every esteemed guest goes through this game. It's like few second game, and it's kind of like quick build round kind of thing, right? So it's a quick answer round where we give like I will ask about a word or a sentence, and you have to say whether it should be built or it should be banned, right?
It should be
And then
built or banned. Hmm.
or ban, correct.
Okay.
So within quick, just a quick answer, and then
Okay.
from your answer we'll take one element, and then we'll discuss why you want it to be banned or why we want to be built, right? So starting right now, tell me quickly, build more or phase down coal,
Phase down, phase out,
oil,
phase out,
gas,
phase out,
solar,
phase in, build more,
wind,
build, do
storage,
more, do a lot more.
nuclear,
Quite tricky.
carbon capture,
No proof it's working. It's not. Don't depend on it.
hydrogen.
Very complex. Some successes, a long way to go.
Perfect. So, in one answer, you said very tricky, which was the nuclear. Why do you think it was? It's a tricky one.
But tricky in so many ways. Cost is very high.
Yes, true.
It takes decades
Yeah.
to implement. You look at all the plans that we had, including in India, the timeline was shifted by years and decades. Extremely expensive and even dangerous if you don't do it properly.
Mm,
Right?
mm,
You can't move it like you can with solar and wind, right? It is transferable if it is required, and then cost wise it's not comparable with solar or wind at all.
true.
Of course, now India and many other countries are talking about smaller reactors, but
SMRs
still
or something.
some of those challenges remain. So the only reason, as I said, tricky, where it competes with coal is the continuity, right?
Mm,
This is where when you said storage, I said do more, because the
mm,
intermittency nature of solar and wind is something because of which it's not able to provide that consistent, not becoming a consistent source of energy. So from that perspective, nuclear provides that, and that's why countries who are phasing out coal are now experimenting with nuclear or expecting nuclear to play that role. But as I said, because of cost factor and the safety part, it's not going to be an actual solution. If it's there in the mix with all those issues addressed, it's fine. Even in India, it's barely 2% of our
2%,
overall
yes.
energy mix. So yeah,
I think
we all
I
get
think
that.
the answer is always the mix just because the region base, not every technologies can work in that specific region. So we have to find the proper mix of renewable energies, storage
Absolutely.
together, so that we can use as a stabilization, grid stabilization, and also to use the other 80% of the grid with the with the renewables and other green technologies. That's really nice factor that you say. Yeah, and also like the carbon capture, we don't have any proper proof or any what's this articles or any studies till now that it's actually work or not. It's a blue carbon that we say something sometimes, but we don't
Rather,
know actually
studies are
how much
indicating
carbon
that
is.
it's not helping at all. It has been decades.
Yeah,
And yeah, if you're protecting ecosystems which are naturally doing that process, absolutely fine, but not those geoengineering and technological processes that have not worked. In some cases, they've consumed more energy than they sequestered.
sequence. I think in AI as well right now, the data centers are a question mark, big question mark in terms of water
Big question
usage
mark.
and
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
water usage and also like the usage of energy they're using with from the same grid. So
Absolutely.
let's see what happens, but also we can make that okay. The AI can be used for better consumption, like to get a proper data of consumption, and we can use it for demand management, demand side management. But in what cost? This is also the main trajectory that will it will it take more energy just to run rather than helping us. This is
Absolutely.
always a factor that we'll have to see. A governance is needed on the space.
Indeed.
So the next one, which is called the rapid fire round, right? And the climate justice in one word, for an example, and that one word should be one word. It's not like two or three. It's
Okay.
just one word that comes to your mind, right? So I'll start with maybe I'll say fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty in one word. Hope or frustration.
Justice.
Okay. Climate justice in one word. COP or communities.
Communities.
One country leading by example.
I would say region, Pacific.
Region specific. Most misunderstood climate term.
I would say justice itself.
That's true. If you had one meeting with every world leader, one world leader you want to meet the first time.
Repeat the question.
If you want to meet with every world leaders, the world leader you want to meet the first.
That's a tricky one because it depends on the message that has to be sent to people. I would like to meet the head of European Union uh, because we still hope that Europe can do way better than what they are doing right now. So, and that's why I'm saying a region, which is very different from the US
Yes,
and
yes.
understands sustainability, yet is not coming out of the shadow of the
Mhm.
US. So, Europe.
When you say not coming out of the shed of the US, what exactly that means?
It means that it is also not offering as much support to developing countries as it is needed.
Mm-hmm.
Now the US is not there. It is still playing the same negotiation game than saying that US is gone from the negotiations. People are looking to Europe. You should do it by example and not, for example, CBAM, the Carbon Border
Yes.
Adjustment
Yeah.
Mechanism.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's for their
Mhm.
own interest. They now recognize, oops, we should have done it differently. You can't just take out a stick and start hitting developing countries. Where is the support system? So, and it's a very US style of working. No, you should not. You can do much things in a very different manner. And you understand equity, you must understand justice. That's how you operate as a group of nations. You practice it, right? But you don't want that learning or that principle to be practiced around the world. That's exactly what we are saying, coming from a
Exactly.
developing country.
I think last year there was a very good paradigm shift from towards the negotiation when I heard from one of the Europe's negotiator. Before they used to say that CBAM is one of the climate solution policy that they came up with, but last year they just changed it to a trade policy so that no climate policies can be discussed in the same trade policy regime, which was quite surprising for me as well. Within 3 years, how it changed the entire narratives. So yes, that's true. We saw the changes, which was just not surprising, but it was also an alarming situation that okay, are we going to the same authority again from one authority, like one bigger one to the another one? So let's see what happens. But yes, thanks a lot for your answer. Just because I was actually asking you the what would be the first sentence that you would say to that world leader. But yes, thanks a lot for that. Finally, there's just an imaginary question that imagine it's 2050. A child asks you, what did your generation do when it knew the climate crisis was real? What answer you would make that you would be proud?
We had shut down the fossil fuel industry and we got justice to those who were impacted and who were not responsible for it. Period.
Amazing, perfect. And also, like for the discussion was quite comprehensive, knowledgeable, insightful. As is to know for the young leaders, we also follow a lot of leaders, and you are one of the leaders that most of the young people follows a lot, right? In terms of livelihood, what suggestions that you can give us in terms of not just in knowing the climate but also knowing ourselves, in terms of your best book that you read, maybe like one or two suggestions that you read and it changed your life, and what does Harjeet Singh do during a Sunday morning kind of thing?
So I do read books and I can recommend a lot and which are there in the back
I
on the
can see that.
background.
Yes, yes,
You
definitely.
can
Yeah.
you can see the books on just transition or even the Ministry of the Future where we talk
Hmm.
about impacts. But I must say beyond reading, and I also read, of course, latest science on carbon brief or climate home news where I get updates. But I'm also a very practical person because you talked about what young people need to do. In terms of knowledge and solutions, I think we have plenty now. We
Mm.
don't 90 more than 90% is known, right? We need to start implementing. That's why part of my life goes to the farm. I do organic farming. I'm engaged with that. I would like young people to start getting into solutions. All the problems, the flip side of that is that there are opportunities. Waste
Hmm.
management is an issue. Find a solution, right? Air pollution is an issue. Find a solution. Be it a technology, be it a change in behavior, be it change in policy, act upon it. Food is going to become a massive issue and we need to change the food systems, and that's why our initiative is trying to look at food in a very comprehensive manner on how we grow, to how we support farmers to and to work with urban consumers as well. So work on solutions, be it energy, be it waste, be it food, be it transport. You can actually create that. So those crises also create opportunities. So acting is more important. Yes, we are engaged in policy work which is required, but I don't think I can survive in these conference rooms and air conditioned halls all my life, and that's why I have 1 feet on ground and 1 feet in these conference halls.
Fantastic. Actually, we started this session as well saying that we have one fate in the future, but also one fate in the past. So I think we have to change the narrative, like one fate in the technology, but also in one fate in implementation. That how we can implement those technologies on the ground. Thanks a lot, really, for
Thank you.
the amazing conversation. Today's conversation was not about losing or choosing between energy and climate. It was about understanding what the future requires, and both the systems are a system change. So energy systems transition, just transition, all the above are the courage to make a difficult discussion and decision today with which can match the future tomorrow. And that difficulty has to be barriered by not just the youth but also everyone together. And thank you for joining us as well. Thanks a lot for that. Today, making this narrative, renewables are expensive, of course, developing countries cannot transition, or maybe climate finance is charity. or energy security means producing more oil. I don't know. There will be a lot of narratives which is going on, but the most important narratives that was fact today was implementation, social economic aspect, and most important, you have to know where exactly the solution needed rather than implementation of the solution. Whether they need the solution or exactly the problem is different that we are not seeing. So this is where we had this discussion, and thanks a lot, Harjit, for actually
Thank you,
coming
sir.
to this session. I hope you like the session. I hope you like the
Oh, absolutely.
agenda as well.
Enjoyed the conversation. Yeah. Thank you, Saikat.
No, that's all we want actually, that our guests should enjoy the discussion and we can get some of the information from their knowledge. And thanks to the entire team who is working back end as well, and thanks to the people who joined. We hit as we said nearly 600, which is really nice. And we will come up with new discussion, different topic with another fantastic esteemed guest. And until then, stay tuned with us.